So um, so in the last class we started working with APIs. APIs are and what they can do. So in the last class we actually we're using the JSON placeholder API. And this API, what we were trying to do last week, sorry, on Tuesday was we put in posts. Okay, so we pulled in posts from the endpoints or from the API that we were given. This just the type slash posts. Then we looked at different verbs which can actually work for your when you're using APIs. So you can use a get to get resources. You can use a post to create resources. You can use a put or a patch to update resources. You can use a delete. You can use delete to delete resources. So all of them, how to use them, a guide on how to use them here. So I'm just going over what we did so that we can actually have a smooth run this morning. So, like I said, you're using for you to use or to make a request to an API. So we understood how an API works. An API is more like a waiter between the kitchen and you that is in the you that came to have a meal. So the waiter takes your order, checks the kitchen. If there's a request, if there's no request, it returns and tells you, oh, we don't have this. Sorry, if there's no positive response, it tells you no positive response. If there's a negative, if there's a positive response, it tells you that there's a positive response. So that's what a waiter, which in this case now, in this context, is your API. So your API goes, checks the server, and if those resources are available, it pulls it up for you. If they're not available, it throws an error for you. So that's like in a nutshell what an API basically does. So when you want to use APIs, we looked at something called fetch. So fetch is like a global, it's a method which can actually it goes to a particular URL, performs an action, and then gives you responses. So it takes the URL. So like without just in its normal in the normal sense, if you're just using fetch like this, hope you guys can see my screen. Okay, yeah. So in the normal sense, when you're using fetch like this, using fetch, this actually is like you getting a response, a request or a resource. You getting a resource actually. So when you're not specifically saying get, you don't have an ID attached to the endpoint. Say for instance, if we look at this one now, yeah, this one. So you see that we have an ID attached to this. So this is for a particular resource. Now, when you just have up to this point, most backend people will actually they actually just put it this way. Probably if it's posts, if it's images, if it's depending on if it's a collection of things. Most times they just give it in a plural kind of in the plural form. So this is posts. So you actually want to get all the posts here. So this is just where it stops. So far as you're not passing, now this fetch is accepting the first condition. Now this first condition is the URL. So that's what it is taking first. Now, because you're doing a get request, because you want to get, you don't need to pass any other thing inside here. Now, when you do this, when you put this URL now, it goes to this link, checks if there are posts. If there are posts, it gets a response. Now, you now have to tell it, how do you want it to be returned? In what form do you want it to be returned? So, in specifying that now, understand how this is going. So, when you do this, then do it then if there's a response, give me the response in a JSON format. Now this JSON, you don't put it, you have to put it with this brackets at the end here. So this is saying, give me this response in JSON format. So it's more like name, so let me just copy this out so that we see what it's like. So this is what it actually comes to. It comes like an array of objects. So it says when it comes here, check and return this thing in JSON format. That's more like this form. So when it gets this thing, it returns it in the JSON format. Now you want to extract just the data that you need here. So in place of this JSON, what I did in my own case was I used data so that I won't get confused. So this is more like get the data. Instead of JSON here, I'll put data. I put data in my own. In the last class, that was what I did. And then you want to console log this. So when you do this now, it gives you all the posts you need. So this gets all the posts. Now it is different when you're doing when you want to create. So when you're doing forget, you don't need to specify. By default, the method that you're doing is you're doing a get. So that means in this other one, it could have been for this method. Look, if you notice now, I told you this one takes this is the first parameter that you're passing in. This other one now is the second parameter. So you do more like it takes a URL, more like a string for the first one. Then it now takes an object. Now this object specifies a couple of things. First one is what method? Are you doing a put? Are you doing a patch? Are you doing a post? So for this first one that we are getting all the posts, we could have actually done get. We could have written get here, but by default, fetch is for get is to get. So when you want to do when you want to use other methods, you now have to specify the method. So here now we now have the method is a post method. So this has to be an object. This has to be an object. So here now we now say, so the method is this. Now for the body, what are we taking in for the body? Because here now you are creating a resource. What and what do you need to specify? Now remember we were dealing with posts now. Now for you to create a post, you need a title, you need a body. Now at the back of your mind, you should know that there is something else that is needed, something like who is creating this post? Which particular person? Can anybody just come to your page and create the post? So there needs to be more like an ID for each person, specifying that, okay, this is the person that created this post. And like I said in the last class, that's the more reason why, let's say on Twitter now, you posted something and then maybe you wanted to delete that. Someone else cannot come and delete that except the person is an admin or has the rights to do that. But so far as you're the person that put up that post, you now have access to delete that. That's what is that's the scenario behind having IDs for each user. So here now, you have a title, you have a body. So if we come back here now, so you see now inside the body now, you need to make this a string, as in the content that you're passing inside here. You need to stringify it. It's in JSON format, but you need to stringify it before you pass it inside. Now, what and what did we say is necessary? You need a title. So that's why we have this title. Now, this stringify is actually a method. And it's a method that takes in an object. So because it's an object, it has to kind of flatten it so that it can pass it into this body. So it stringifies this and puts it inside so that the body can actually make use of what is involved, what it needs. So remember, we need a title. We have an input field for a title here. Then we need a body which corresponds with this part. Then the user ID. So because this user ID is not dynamic per se, so that's why it's hard coded here. It doesn't change. So then another thing that you need to pass along with this second parameter is, so three things. First one, method. Second one, the body. Third one, the headers. So what are you accepting? You're accepting a JSON, application / JSON. So this is more like you don't really need to worry about all these ones. You can just include them. And the major part where you need to take note of is the method, and then what are you passing in for the body. So that is more like when you're creating resources. So when you do that, when you send this request, it passes this along with this URL now. So when it goes there now, it knows that, okay, I'm doing a post. So when you're doing a post, you're creating something. Then it gives you the response. You want the response in a JSON format. Then when you console log this, when you get the data now and you console log this, you now see that this object that you created is what comes up. So let's just do that and let's see it. Before I go into the other things that we have today. So if I click on create tools, so you see now this is line 63. Let me just move this up. Get that point. So line 63. So here now, this is where we are creating. This is where we are creating this. Now, so everything I've actually been talking about actually done them. So when you console log this, which is the data that is coming from everything that we did here. So the same, what I was showing you before, you're passing the posts, the URL, the body, the headers, you get a response. Now you want to extract the data, and that is what is showing up here. So you see what is involved. So you have a body, you have an ID, you have a title, and each of them, they correspond to all of this. Correspond to this. So okay. So now so that's so when you get this, sorry, when you get this data now, when you get the data, you now specify how you want it to be. Do you want it to be at the end? So since you understand that what we are dealing with is more like an array. So hope we're not confused. Are we confused? Yeah, can you guys hear me? Okay. So so um so basically what we've learned from let me just close all of this. So what we've learned is that there are some things necessary for you to be able to create these things. One of which is you need to understand how how you arrange your stuff, your HTML. You need to understand how you arranged it. Let me run this. So I have my form at the top. I have where I want to display the cards at the bottom. Now, everything I needed the post folder, I needed the form, I needed the title, which is more like my input. I needed the body, which is where I need to. Yeah, so these two things. These ones I need them to, or these three things. I need a form for creating. I need a form for creating the resource or a new post. I needed the title. I needed the body. Since those are the things I need. So for the normal, for the gets, this was what we did. You're doing a fetch, you're getting this. When you get all the response, all the posts, you return it in the JSON format. Now remember, I had to break this down into functions so that I can play around with them easily. So this first function is to get posts. And remember, I had to create an empty array here. More like this is where I'll be storing the post. When I get the post, I want to store it inside this post box. Now, when I get this response, all of them is in JSON format. I extract what I need. I just need, because this response now, if you just stop at this point, there's a whole lot of things that are coming with the response at that level. So you want to extract just the data that you need to work with. So that's why I have this then data. Now this data now is actually the array of posts. Is an array. It returns an array. So because I want it to be uniform, and I want to be able to use it for other functions. That was why I created this post box outside here. So now this post box, I take the data which I get from here and now store it inside this my own post box. Now this post box now, I can now do a for each because this post box now contains the 100 posts which I needed. Now remember our method of remember this method of kind of injecting HTML into a particular section or a particular element on your page. So I created a post holder, which is a string. And then since we got the post box now is an array. So I'm able to use this for each on them. Now this for each, this post box dot for each item in the post box. So I am getting a post from the post box. Now for each post in the post box, now this post holder is going, this plus and equals to is more like you doing a kind of concatenation, but you're still equating it to the same post holder. So it's more like this whatever you have here is going to be injected into this post holder at the end. So I now have, this is how I want my layouts to be. It's actually a column with a card body, and then you now have every other thing that you need: the post ID, the post title, the post body. Let me wrap this. Then you now have the buttons. So I added an extra button from the last class because I want to also talk about viewing on a different page. So how do you do that? How do you view posts on a different page? So I also have the dates. I also have the delete button. Now, this is like going to create, since for the number of posts I have here, so like I have 100 posts, so I'm going to get this whole thing in that's 100 posts, that's 100 places. So when I actually do this, I need to now inject this into my row, because columns, row is more like a display flex. So you want to inject it into a display flex for the column so that it can wrap even on a small screen. So when you do the inner HTML, you can now assign this post holder into the post wrapper, which is getting this post holder, which is coming from this row. Yeah. So when that happens, we now get that's how we got this thing that is showing on our screen. That's how we got all of this. Is anybody confused about this point? Is anybody confused about what I just talked about? I don't know, are we confused or do we understand or we are confused? I don't know which one. Okay, okay, thank you so much. So that's for getting. Now the other thing to look out, or the other thing that we worked on, was creating the post. Now for creating the post, remember I said we need inputs. We need input fields. So I have this my form section where I have put IDs where necessary. So I have the form, I have on the title, I now have on the body, and then my button is a type of submit. Yeah, is a type submit. So the reason being that I want, when I submit this form, this is actually created. So basically what this does is I got everything I needed here using query selector. Then I now attached an event listener to the form. Now that event listener takes two parameters. One is a submit, the other one is a function that you want it to work on. So one is the kind of event that you want. Is it click, is it submit, is it over, all those kind of things. So here now, what we want to do is once on submit, you call this function create post. Now this create post is this one. So you have a function create post. Now remember we said because we are doing a submit, when you submit a form, the default behavior is that it reloads, and then the data that we submitted is lost. So what we wanted to do is we want to prevent that default behavior. So that's why we use events, that is this dot prevent default. Now with this events that prevent default, we try to look at where we now had access to the title value and then the body value, because or when the page, when you submit, it now stores, you're now able to see that this information is preserved. Whatever you put here is preserved. So you still use that's after being certain that we have access to this, we now try it out the fetch now. Now this fetch, remember I said we are doing posts because you're creating a resource, you're creating a post. Now you now have to pass in the body. What do you need? What do you need to create the post? So you need to stringify it, by the way. So we needed the title. So this title is more like this title, you're passing in the title.value. This title.value is coming from this query selector, this input field. So this is the input.value you're passing. Then you can now add your headers, content type, application, the JSON. Now when you click, when this goes through, you get a response. Now this response, the same way, you want it to be in a JSON format. Now this JSON format, it comes with a whole lot of things. So that is more like, that's why you now have to do another dot then. So this first dot then gets the response, but it's a whole lot of things. So you want it in JSON format. Then you now have to do a second dot then. Now this dot then, you're able to extract the data inside here. You're able to extract the data. And then when you console log this, you're able to see what you just created. Now, we were trying to look at how do you add a resource to an array. So going by our array methods, you can do an on-shift or you can do a push. Now, on-shift adds to the beginning of the array, while push adds to the end of the array. So we had to do this first before doing this whole repeating the whole trying to re-render or create the layout again. So this is more like you now re-rendering the layout. Like, okay, I've created a new resource. So store it inside, push it inside the post box, which is what happens here. So remember that post box is coming from here, which initially it now stores, this one runs first. Remember that we had to call this get post outside here so that when you just load your page, when you just open your page, this the post automatically comes in. But these other ones now you need to click on submit to create a post. That's why that submit this thing is on the form. And then when it comes now, when you now unship, so unship adds it over the new, because your post box now is updated with new content. So you need to re-render that new content. So that's why we now have a post box doing a for each and still injecting the same information inside that particular inside that layout again. So which is basically this post wrapper is just basically this row section. Where is it? Yeah, so this is it. This is it. Are we confused about this part too? We understand this part. All right, all right. Okay, so let's play around with updates. I think this is when the class started properly. Is Mubarak available? Is hope we are good. Okay, okay, okay. So yeah, I understand that we need to pay a whole lot of. Hope my network is better. Can you guys hear me? Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. Um, okay, so let's look at it. So we want to update a particular post. So update post. Okay. So we want to update post now. So now for updating a particular post, so for updating a particular post, you need, so I added this update button here under my UI. Only looking, yeah. So you still need an input field that will specify what you're going to update. Into the body, you need somewhere that you'll be able to input the same input what you want to change it to. So say for instance, we want to change this one, you need to put the title here that you want to change it. You could also, if you don't want to put the body, you can leave that one and still retain this one, or and change both of them. So that's what we want to look at now. So let's go over, let's go, yeah, let's go to our guide. So here now, updating a resource. So you're more like, let me just get this. Okay. So if you check now, so to update a resource, that means we need the ID. As you can see here now, we need the ID, and then we need to be able to we need what we want to update. We want to change the title, we want to change the body. It's more like you're creating a resource. It's just almost the same thing. The only thing is that you're using put. Now, when you're using put, it basically updates what is there. It doesn't create a new one, but it updates a particular one. So that's why we have this ID here. Now, since we are doing updates, we are doing an update, we need to pass in the ID. We need to send in the ID. Now, going back to when we are getting the post. So this is get post. Now, this get post has an update button. So let me adjust this. Yeah, so we have a button here for update. Now we have this on-click listener. This on-click listener takes and updates posts. It calls, when you click on it, it's supposed to call the update function. Now, because we want a particular ID, so that's why we are using the post.id here. We are passing it into this function. Now, let me close this crate so we can see what is going on. And then I will just comment my fetch for now. So let's do a console.log, and then we are looking at the ID. So we want to see which ID is actually passed inside here now. So when we go to this, 44. Did I change something? I was not supposed to. Okay. Failed to fetch. I think what is happening. Okay. Okay. So let's look at this now. So this is, let's say this is number 3 now. This is the one we want to update. If I click on update now, you see it tells you number 3 because the ID is 3. If it is 9, if I click, it tells you that this is 9. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay. Yeah, so we actually need an ID when you want to to update or delete, you need an ID to actually do that. So now that we've seen that we are getting an ID, yes, so this update post, you need to pass in the parameter here. And this parameter too, we had to add it here because if you don't put it on your button or on the loop of this, it's not actually going to pass in the ID. So that's why we had to put it over the loop. Now, so that as this button now is now saying that when this loops over, this should now pass in this post.id into this update post method. So which is taking this ID here. So this ID is the equivalent of what is passed inside this update post here. So that is why we are having this. Now, with that in mind, so with that in mind now, we can now come and start playing around with this our page. So understand how everything works. So page, so it takes the link. Now this link, you can't, if you just click on only one now, this will now update only the first one. But you want this to be dynamic. So you have to make it to be different. So that's why we are passing in this ID here so that we can use it inside this our page. So I'm going to remove this and then put a backtick. Alternatively, I put a whole lot cleaner. So I'm going to do $1 and I'm going to add my ID here. All right. So if I click on number 10, what we are going to have is JSON placeholder.typicode.com/post/10 here. So it knows that this is the 10th item that we are going to update something here. So I hope we understand that. This ID, I'm going to pass in my ID. This ID is equals to this ID. Do you understand how this why we had to do this? Please, if you're confused, ask questions. Ask questions. Do you understand how this happened? Oh, okay. Okay. So we've been able to we understand this now. So now the objects that we are passing in now. So we understand there is a put, and then we need to specify what we are going to change this into. Now, if I attempt this now, it's my button link. So my button is actually linked. I have this update function on my button. So remember that it is on the for each. I had to put it on the for each so that each card has its own button. So that's why if I just come here now and click on update. Okay, it's taking a while, but it has come in. So you now see that the second item is what we change. Now, instead of, we don't have anything that we're passing in. So what is actually I hope we can see this part of my screen. So we have a title. Remember that in our here now, we have this title, which is what? Foo, and then bar. So when I clicked on update, it now gave me a title of foo and then bar, which in our own case may not be what we want. Let's say we want something reasonable that we want to change it. Maybe like Simple Soul was saying the other day, you want English instead of this. So you cannot change for all of them. And it's actually a temporary fix. So let's say we want to change this content now. Now, instead of this foo and this bar, now we want to be able to type something. So I'm going to still use this our post form here. So we want to use our post form. Let's take it one step at a time. So we want to be able to type something here, type something here. You're not clicking on create post, because if you click on create post, you're creating a new resource. What you're clicking on is updates. You're clicking on updates. It will just take this input and this one, if necessary, and then change what you need to change here. So that's what we are trying to do now. So instead of this foo, remember that we picked that we use query selector to select the title field and the body field. So I'm going to replace this with what? Title dot value. Then body dot value. So these are coming from the input fields now. So that's why when I type something here, yeah, sorry about that. Can you guys hear me now? Okay. So I'm just going to type anything random here and random here, and then click on updates. So see what it now gives us. So you have an ID of, since it's number 2 that we clicked on, you have an ID of 2. You have a title of something random I typed. The body 2 is something random I typed, which is coming out from this input. It's coming out from here. And the user ID is still fixed. So do we understand? Do we understand what I did to get to this point? Do we understand how I passed in this year? Okay, okay, okay. So let me explain myself. Now, do you understand how create works? If you understand how creating works, it's the same way that put works. So the only difference is just that you're using put here. Now, when you want to update a particular resource, say for instance, you want to change the title, you need a type, you need a value. Yeah. So you need a value. And then for the body too, you also need a value if necessary. But then you get the response. The response is JSON. Now this should sorry, can you guys hear me now? All right. Sorry about the breaking transmission. Yeah. So I was saying that you need the title value and then the body value. The other ones, this ID is more like what you're passing in from here. This user ID is hard coded because we don't have access to this value. We don't have access to change that value. You can also change, you can change it to whatever. So being hard coded, it's more like you can change it to any value that you want, but it's not dynamic. So when you're done with this section, you do it and then you get a response. When you click on the button, it runs this one, updates what it needs to update, now gives you the response. Now this response, you need to extract what you need. So what we need is actually what is showing up in the console. Really having a hard time with this. So Okay. So, so um so if I type something. Okay. I don't know what to do again. I don't know what to do again. Sorry. Um. Right. So when you create this when you create a resource, when you want to update a resource, sorry that the network is actually when you create a resource. Okay, so when you just create a when you type out what you want to change, and then you click on update. Okay, so when you get the response and you've extracted the data here, so the next thing that you need to do is you need to find out where you want to inject, where you want to replace. Now, remember that when you're looping, can you guys hear me? Sorry. Say apologies for having a crazy network. And then please, you can come and take the stage. This, I don't like, I don't like what it is. Okay, please. I'm sincerely sorry about this. Can't control it. I don't know. I tried what I can. Okay, so please, so when you've been able to get the data that you need, can we hear me? Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me now? Sorry. Ah, and that's really like the worst thing. Okay. Can you guys hear me now? Can you see my screen?
Yes, you can see your screen.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay. So when when you get the data now, the next thing that you want to do is you check how your how how your um how your layout looks like. So now notice that we have the H6. So we have the paragraph first. Now this paragraph, so for each card now, if you look at the way it is displayed here, so you have this, and then you have the title, and then you have the content, the body itself. So looking at that now, when you come here, so you have the post body. So I gave the class of post body. I also gave this one a class of post title. So we want to change this content, the content based on what we type. Now, you know that when this loops over 100 times, you're able to get you get 100 items that have this same post title. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So if this loops 100 times, that means we have 100 H6 that have a class of post title. Do we understand that? For each, when this loops, yeah, when this loops 100 times, so we have 100 H6 that have the same post title. Same thing for the post body. So here now, I want to get the post title. So I will say let post titles be equals to document.query selector, document.query selector all. So want to get all the post titles. Want to get all the post titles. So that's why we're using query selector all to get everything that has the class of post title. Same thing for the body. Okay, let me just console log this one so that we will see Okay. So know that. Okay. So understand that we need to click on this button first before we're able to get. So look at what we have now. Can you guys see my screen? So can you guys see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So we have the node list. So node list is like a list of every listing that has a class of post title. And then remember that we say H6, 100 H6. If we look over this thing, we have 100 H6 that have the post that has the class of post title. So that's how we're able to get all of this. Now, each of them, they have an index, 0, 1, 2, and all of that. So if this is the first one, for the first one here, we have an okay, so for each of these, we have an index. Can you guys hear me now? Okay. So we have an index. So remember that we have IDs here. These are the IDs. And now these are the index. So we want a situation whereby we can compare the index here along with the ID before we make a change for a particular item. So if we are changing for the first one, we want it to just be only this one that we are updating for, just this one. So a way that I will do that, I will just say, since I've gotten the post title, I need to look over the post title since it's an array. Post titles dot for each. So for each post title, so for each post title, okay, so for each post title now, what I want to do is I want to confirm if the index, so when I'm doing this for each now, for each can take an additional parameter, which is what index. So this is like when you're looping over this array of this thing that has post titles, you're doing you're passing in, you're checking the index of each of them. So post for each post titles for post titles for each. So you want to get a single post item or post title rather. Then you also want to check the index. So if the index plus 1, because you know it is 0 index. So if index plus 1 is equals to the ID. Then you want to do post title dot inner HTML is equals to title. So if the index coming from here, so remember that when we console log this here, we had an array. So let me just click on this. So we had an array, this array now. And then the index was 0, 1, 2, 3, and all of that. So we are now saying can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so I was talking about remember that we console log these post titles. Now these post titles, when you do query selector, you get an array. So we are looping over the array, and then we are trying to get each post title and then get the index. Now the index, if the index is actually 0 base, so it starts from 0 because it's an array. Not the index, rather. I mean, yeah, the index starts from 0. Then the IDs of each of these things, the ID is 1, 2, and so on till 100. So you want to compare this index with the ID now. So that's why I'm having this if statement inside here. Now, so I'm looping over them, and I'm now saying if index plus 1 is equals to ID. Remember that our ID is the normal numbering, 1, 2, 3 to 100. So if the index, which is from the first one, 0, so if 0 plus 1 is equals to the ID, which is coming from here, this ID, that you should pick the post title.inner.html of that entity and then assign it with this data. This data here, remember, is an object. So this data dot, because this data dot title, now assign it to this thing. So if we test this out, so I want to try it with this particular one. Let me just reload this page. Okay. So I want to change this one. I want to change number 3 now. I click on updates. You see what happens here. This is what I have here. This one has also changed. Sorry, do we see what happened?
Yes, boss.
Okay. Okay, so we're able to change the post title now. We also need to do the same thing for the post body. So when I come here, I just need to also, I'll repeat this. And instead of title, yeah, it's something that you need to sit down and think through it. I actually stayed up late yesterday trying to figure it out. Okay, so I've done for the post title. Now the post body, now I still need to do the same thing. So you know when you do query selector or yes, updating can be some updating can be it's not like creating. Yeah. I'm not a superwoman, please. So for the post body, I'm still going to do the same thing. So I'll just shift into this. So people are going to use this one against me now. Thank you. The post title is from, yes, it's from the card. I gave it, this is it here. So for each time you render it, that's on your create or on your get, you need to attach a post title to the post title element. So this is a class. I want to get the post titles. That's why I'm using the query selector all. So to get all of them. So this post title is a list. Then this post title is when you look over all the post titles, which is an array, then you get a single. This is more like is the normal for each. The only thing is that we have an additional thing because we want to compare with the ID for that particular post. So now we are saying that for each post title, the index of that post title, which is coming from here now. So this and this go together. So the index of that post title plus 1, if it is equals to this ID, which is coming from here, this post title dot inner HTML, which remember is for this particular, this H6. You want to change, this is the inner HTML. Either you use inner HTML or you use text content to still work. So this post title, so it finds if they are equal, if the ID and the index is equal, it now comes to this place now. If they are equal, this post title dot inner HTML, you want to change it with the data dot title, which is an object. Do we understand that? The data is an object. Yeah. So the title now is what we are putting. Is now what we are changing. We are changing the post title dot inner HTML and putting this value. All right. So once we do this same thing for the body, post bodies. So I'm putting this here. So this will now be a single post body. And then you do a comma and then add an index. So if post bodies dot for each, you get the post body, you pass in the index too. So you're now comparing the index, which is still zero based, it starts from 0. So if the index and this ID match, the reason being that the IDs are not just normal numbers. The index are 0, is from 0 to 99. So if you want the index to match with the ID, you have to add a plus 1 so that both of them can actually tally. So this index plus 1, if it's equals to the ID, you want to change the post body dot inner HTML and you want to do data dot body. So let's test this out. I come here and I just say something random and I just type a whole bunch of what I don't know. So I come here, I click on updates and it's updated. So the title updates, this other one updates. Do you understand what happened? Do you understand? Do we get this now? Now, the small issue that we will have now is you're taking this value from here. You're comparing, you're getting all the post titles and then the post bodies, and then you're looping over them. Now this will give you 100 post titles. It might not work. Title. Okay, so this will give you 100 post titles, but it's an array, so it will start from 0 to 99. Now, when you look, because it's an array, you can do it for each on them. Now, this for each, it's going to get the post title. Now that this post title is what you want to get the inner HTML and change it to your own title. Now, if you're now checking if this index, in the index, which is let's say if we are doing for the first one, if the index is 0, 0 plus 1 will now make this to be a true. If this is true, change this inner HTML to this data.title. Yeah. So this is basically what happens. So this is created, and this other one is also, is also created. So it's just the same thing. It's just that same listen. So let's so that is basically how updates works. But the thing is, what happens now if, for instance, this is empty? So these fields are empty now. And then I click on updates here. So you see now this, because there was nothing inside my input, so this is empty. So this is actually not good. So how do we work against this now? So inside here now, after doing this if check, I can say if my my data dot title, if my data dot title is not equals to an empty string, then this should just work. Same thing for this one. If yes, you can do the check. You can do the check. So if the data.body is not equals to an empty string, then you now change this. So you don't want somebody to just come here and just when you click on this, something just happens. This just changes. No, like this is empty now. This is an empty string. This is an empty string. You don't want this to change. You only want it to change when there are values inside here. So when you click here now changes this for you. Alternatively, you can also do a check before you do the fetch so that you see, so that you see if this is empty. Yes, Tolu, what's your question? Okay, okay. So you can do, I've answered it or you have answered it. Which of them? Okay, so you can actually do the check before you do the fetch. You kind of validate this input before you do the fetch. So that's that validation we're doing. You can do it before you do the fetch. But basically, this is how updates works. Okay, so let me talk about let's talk about let's talk about the showing on a different page, to view on a different page. So I'll just do a function and then I'll call that function, I called it open single. So because I actually want to see, I want to see my post on a different page. So what happens here is you want to get a single resource. You want to fetch a single resource. So if I go back to this, so you want to get a single resource, and then you want to show it on a different page. So I'm going to copy this. I'll put it inside here. Now, you see that this has an ID. So you need to also change this to fit what you need. Okay. Okay, so I'll just pass my ID here. My ID is coming in from here. So I need to remove this other guy. Okay. So on my, when I am getting, so this is get, I have a button that says view, and it has an on-click function that says open single, and then you're passing in the ID here. So let's see what happens. So if I click on view, so it gets this particular resource. So if you compare it now, you see that this title is the same as this title. The body is the same as this body, but it's in a different page. So, you know, normal get, when you're using a normal get request, you don't need to pass in any additional listing here. You don't need to do, it's not like put or post. You just need to get your response, which is in JSON format. And then you now need to get this. I'm going to use data here, not bits, data. Okay, so are we together? Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
All right. All right. So when you get this data, now, which is a single post, like you're getting a single post, which is going to give you an object, normal fetch, where I believe we understand how this one works. So inside here now, we need a storage, because the thing with viewing on a different page is that when you move to a different page, your data is actually lost. If you don't store it somewhere, your data is lost. When you go to a new page, it's actually it's lost. So what we want to do here is, so let me just do this. So first things first, let's see how you move to a different page. So you have the window, yeah. So a window object, or yeah. So you have window dot location. So window dot location. So you see this locations, and that was why we're having issue the other time. So window dot location dot href. So remember that href is for you to move to a different page. So it's more like your anchor tag. So you want to go to a different page. So let's see. Let's see. I don't even know what this will give us. This was not what I did. But let's see. Okay. So if I click on view, yeah. So if like, okay, so my ID is okay. So this is what I have. I have a page. I have a page, single.html. So I have to create a page. I have to create a single.html page, which will just be it will just hold a card, to just hold a card for me. It has the same view like the other ones. You can actually make your own to be different. You can center the card or any distance since it's the only one. But since I wanted it to be a quick one, that was why I just used the same layout. So back to what I was saying now. So there's this windows.location.href. So what I did was you can use this and just do single.html. So you're saying when when you get the data, when you get the data now, that lets your browser take you to the single.html page. So you're clicking on view. So when you get this data now, you want your browser to now take you to this single.html page. Do we understand this? So if I click on, let me just go back. I click on view, it takes you to the single.html. Do we understand this? Okay. Okay. Okay, so we want it to move to that page, but the fact is, okay, let's see now. Let's see what happens here now. So we said let us console log this data now. When you come to this, even if I bring this data to this other place, so I click on view. Yeah, so that's the listen. It's actually not, it's not, we've not done anything to make it show on the other side. We are just, we first thing we want to see what do they call it? The this data now that we want. This data here. Cannot see this. We don't have access to this data because it refreshes and clears it off. So we don't have access to this data. So for us to be able to use this now, we need to store this data somewhere. And that brings us to local storage. So there is a storage on your um, there's a storage on your browser where you can store something so that you show on a different page. So this is what I am going to do. So for you to use local storage, you have to call the local storage. Then you need to set an item. So set item. What do you want that this thing to be called? So I can just say viewed. So I'm calling this viewed posts. Then you now have to stringify this because this is an object. And now, and local storage basically stores as a string. local storage stores as a string. So if I decide to, if I want to store this now and I store it without stringifying it, it will not get the proper response. So you need to stringify this data that is coming inside here. So let me now route to a different page so that we'll see what happens with this. So local storage dot set viewed post. This is the name I want to see it as. Yes, there's a whole lot to study. Yeah. So you want to set item. This is the name, and then this is what I want to store inside it. Now, so let's get this picture so that you see what is actually happening. Now, say for instance, this is the one I want to view. So this is number 11. If I click on view and I open, why is it routing? I thought I closed the routing. If I click on view, okay, so I have this now. So I'm going to just bring this down so that we see what I am talking about. So I have this is showing, this is the console.log. But what I want is, see local storage now. You go to application, you check through all of this, you see local storage. Then on local storage, you now see this window or this page. So if you check this now, you will see that which one did we click? We clicked number 12. So let me just try it again. So viewed post, viewed post. This is number one. This is number 5. So you have user ID. Let me zoom in. So the user ID is 1. The ID is what? 5. The title, yeah. So the title is this. So you see, this is stored here. And then the body is also stored there. So with this now, if we go to another page, we now have access to this particular thing, and then we can use it on that page. Do we understand this? Do you understand how this is stored now? Okay, so when you're using local storage, you have to call the local storage this thing, what I call it, keyword. So local storage or object rather, local storage dot set item. So when you're setting, it's just like you're arranging something. Set item. So I want this to be called viewed post. If you check here now, you'll see that the key here is viewed post. This is what I want it to be called. The value now is this data. Value is this data that is coming in here. So this data, so it's actually an object. It's not a random name. It comes with the local storage dot set item. It's not item set. I just set item, singular, set item, not items. Sorry. So if you actually hover on it, it tells you what it does. So it creates a key and value listing. So this is what you want it to be called. Then you need to stringify. If it's an object, if it's a string, you can just put a string like that. But if it's an object, you need to make it a string first. So you need to do JSON.stringify whatever it is. So this is data. Data is coming in here. It's an object. So when I click on this, this fetches the resources, the resource for me, a particular resource. I extract it here, which is an object. I now pass it inside here. So it's, since I am setting, it stores it in the local storage. So this is the key, and then this is the value. the user ID, the title, the this, the body. Do we understand this? We get it now. Okay, okay. Please let's just follow on. Just understand it small. So if I do this now, if I do this, I now have, so when I click on, even if I go to a different page now, if I click on view and I come to this page, you will still see this showing up. No problem. So this, you'll still see this up here. Now, there's something I did not, that just happened behind the scene anyway. So let me just update us on that. So for this, my single.html, I actually have a single.js. So this single.js is only for this page. And now what do I really want to do here? I just want to, this is my single.js. I just want to render a single post. So that's the only thing that happens on this single.js page. Now, what happens here now? So when you set, if you want to use it, if you want to use what you got on a different page, if I remove this now, this, even if we come to this page, we will not, yeah. So this is what we should, we will not get what was, we will not get what we previously had. Okay, so if I click on view, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So if I remove, when I remove the, when I removed this, so this first line now, I'm going to explain it shortly. Even if I route to a new page, you see that I clicked on number 2, but I'm still seeing the default this here. And this is not what I want. So remember that we set with local storage. So when you set with local storage, you need to get. So local storage dot get that item that you saved. By pass, as in you pass in the view, the name of that, the key. So let me just comment this. now. So when you set, you need to get on a single.js, you need to get for you to be able to use what you stored, because you don't have access to it if you don't get it. So if I console log this in, if I console log this now, come to the console. Now you see what we have here. Now this is what we have inside our, yes, inside here. This is what we have. But now it is a string. It is a string. Yes, it's more, it's just like export and import here. Now look at it now. Okay, so back to this now. So this is a string. You don't have access to. Okay, that's the, what do they call it? Okay. Okay, I think that's better. So if you do not get, you don't have access to, the new object. You don't have access to what is stored in local storage. So you need, when you even now get, it comes as a string. Now that string, you need to convert it back to an object. So to convert it back to an object, you need to do JSON.parse. You need to do JSON.parse. We'll convert this new object, which is a string, into an object. So that's why we now have, if we console log post now, sorry about that. I can't help. Sorry. There's a whole lot to cover. That's just the truth. So that's why I'm giving you the option. Just do 4. You might not decide to do all of them. Just do 4. So you need to, for you to convert this to an object, you need to pass JSON.parse. The other one was JSON.stringify when you want to store. But this one is JSON.parse, and you need to store it in a variable. So I stored it in a variable called post. So if I check my browser, you now see that we now have this user ID. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you now have access to this body, the ID, the title, then the user ID. That is, but before, this is what we got. This was what we got. And this is a string. You can't use a string. So that's why you need to pass it. You need to do JSON.parse. So when you do that now, the next thing that you need to do is you go to your, there are different ways of doing this. Is either you do the same injecting into the single.html like we've been doing. Sorry, this is the wrong one. So this is single.html. So it's either you inject it into maybe the row, as you just inject this into the row. Maybe you give this a class and then just inject this the way we'll be doing with the for each. Or what I did was I just picked some certain things. So like the title now, the title, I want to change the title. So I gave it I picked this idea of post title, and then this idea of post body, and then this post ID here. So that's why on my single.js now, I now have document.getElement by ID by post ID dot inner HTML is equals to this post. Same thing for the title. The inner HTML is equals to post dot title, and then this other one is equals to post dot body. So let's see. Okay, so let's say I go to like the last one and I click on view, it comes here, you now have this. So I would say I don't need these buttons. I don't need these buttons on my single dot. So these buttons are actually coming from here. I only need to see the posts. Well, you can play around with that if you want, but I just need this post. So I have access to this. I have access to the title. I have access to the body and all. And then you can also put a back button if you want. So if I click on the back button, it goes to this. So do we understand what I did? Do we understand this? Okay, okay. So yeah, just I think it would be easier, except you want to start playing around with that. I think it's just straightforward to get the 100 and just play and use it at once. Except, well, if you want to get 50 and do it that way, the only thing is, the only thing is, I just want to be able to perform the actions. If I click on create post, I'm able to create. If I click on view post, I want to be able to view. If I click on update, I want to be able to update. And so I'll actually I will put my I so, so should I talk about the delete? Did we do delete? Or you guys
Yes,
have
boss.
already figured
Yes,
it out?
boss. Let's just see how you want to do your own.
Okay.
No? Mm.
Okay. So let's just do delete. Okay, so back to app.js. So function delete posts. Leave Mubarak now. Mubarak is a bad guy. Posts. Funny how he has. Is it because I said he was quiet and he's a talkative on his bed? That's why he does not want to talk. Okay. Okay, so let's do delete. So this is delete. So yeah, so delete does not, delete is quite straightforward. Delete is straightforward. So you just need this. You just need to pass in the ID. So I'm just going to change this. I believe we understand how this ID thing is coming about. Okay, so this should actually be uh, okay, so delete post. So this is actually going to be, this delete post is on my button already. So I have on click delete post. Now what happens is that when you delete, you're not supposed to get, you're supposed to get, if you console log this now, if you console log, if you do a dot, then so wow, so if I do a dot, then wow, this guy has just, this guy is just appealing. Okay, does this work? Let's see. Let's see. Let me see if that works. That'll be wonderful. If I click this and it ain't happening. Okay, so I'll just do a, so from here now, I'll just do a dot then, and I want my response, then response.json. I want another dot then. So it's actually giving, you're supposed to get like the data. Now. Okay, so if I console log this data now, if I console log this data, so let's say I delete, I click on delete. So it gives you an empty object. This is line 150. It gives you an empty object because you've actually deleted something. Then the other thing is that this is supposed to actually, this is supposed to go out from your UI. Like it's not supposed to be on the design. It should just show that somebody has deleted something. So remember, I have a post box. Now this post box, I am going to filter it out. I'm going to filter that particular one that I deleted. So I'm just going to say a postbox.filter, postbox.filter, and then it's going to take a single post. Now that single post, I am filtering the one, I'm going through the IDs. I'm going through the IDs that are not equals to this ID that is passing in. When I get what I filtered, I push it back into this post box. So if I console log this now, you'll see that it keeps decreasing. So see now it's 99. 98. But the thing is, you need to remove this. Else, somebody might just say to click again. And if you click here, you still have the same number, which is actually not supposed to be. So this is actually supposed to go up. So what will you do now? So since since we have a new value, since our post box gets a new value, the next thing to do is just do a for each. So I'll just need to bring this back. So the same thing is just re-rendering the layout now. So if I come here now, let's say I come to number 5, I delete this. See now, I have 4, I have 6, the other one is 4. Delete this now. I have 6, 8, and so on and so forth. Do we get this? Yes. Victor, you're thinking straight. You're thinking well. So it's actually true. That can be a function. That can be a function. And that function, somebody should think it up. It just depends on you, Sha. So render UI. So I'll just do. So I think what I need here is I need an array. I'll just say, okay. So that means I'll just get from here. Inside here. So that means I am replacing this post box with ARR. Okay, and that means inside here now, I'll just call render UI, and I will pass in what post box, right? I don't know if anybody is thinking how I am thinking. Let me just give a comment here. User interface. Okay. So let's see if that works. If I click on it, okay. So what do you guys think? Victor, is that better? Did anybody follow me in what I did? Did anybody understand what I did? Mubarak, did you understand what I did? So I have a function. Since, you know, the rule in development is like, don't repeat yourself. So all these things I've been doing here, all this, what do they call it? I've been doing this. I keep repeating myself, It's actually not supposed to be. It's actually not supposed to be. So what I did now was I put this inside a function. A function is supposed to make your code smaller. Now this function is now supposed to help me to display the UI for a particular, let's say I want to re-render my page. So I want to display those posts again. Let's say I deleted something and I want to show the updated version of that post. So why do I have to keep repeating the same thing when I can do it inside a function? So what I did was I created a function, and now this function is going to take an array. And you know this whole thing now, that's more like what I asked you to do in your task. So you have an array, and then you're doing a for each, and then you're looping over each post, and then you're injecting it into you're getting the row, and then putting this value, this post folder, which has been updated after looping, into the inner HTML. So now, instead of saying that, okay, I want to now loop over my post box here, I can just call this render UI function and then pass into this function. Functions take parameter, pass into this function, the array. If I hover on it, you see that it tells you an array. Array are usually in square brackets. So instead of repeating this in multiple places, I just do render UI, which is this function, and then pass in the array. So when the array comes inside here now, it now replaces this ARR. Notice I'm not using post box. I'm using this array that is coming in as a parameter. So that means even if I use it in another place, I need to pass in that's the array. If I want to get post and I want to still use the same thing now, let's say I want to do this here now, get post. So I just remove this, and then I just say render UI, and then I pass in this post box. This post box is an array. When you get an array, so you're storing it inside post box. So alternatively, I could decide not to. Well, I could just decide to go direct and use this here. But all the same, I stored it inside postbox, and I'm passing it postbox inside this render UI. So that's why even if I refresh my screen now, I still get this same render. The render UI function is called, and then all of this just happens. Do we understand this? Cassie, do you understand? Cassie, do you understand? Okay. So there's a whole lot I have. There's a whole lot I've actually not covered. And well, 4 months is actually not enough to learn everything. Even myself, I don't know everything. So you need to still study. You need to apply a whole lot of things. You need to try out, keep building things, keep testing things out. And I believe that you guys are actually going to do well. So I've talked about a whole lot of things. Yes. Yeah, that's true. JavaScript is a lifelong learning thing. So don't beat yourself. Don't beat yourself up if you're not getting into it. Don't beat yourself on a whole lot of things. Well, that's why I kept telling people to study, to go and be studying this thing. We're not, people that actually tried out stuff. I think they are following. Go and hold Tolu, who again? Even Mubarak. Go and hold him. Yes. Just keep reading. Keep reading, keep studying. Keep practicing. You'll actually get there. So there's a whole lot. There's a whole lot to learn, and I believe and I trust you guys so much. I trust you guys so much. I've actually taken time so that you guys will understand these things, so that as you're doing it, as you're working on your task, you're going to just do it very. You're not going to have so much issue. So please don't beat yourself if you're not getting it at once. Just know that you have to keep trying, trying, trying. Yeah, I'll follow up with I'll follow up with IK on that. Right, so it's love it. I did not hear your voice. The merit, I did not hear your voice. Uh, Merit, I'm coming for cake, by the way. Natasha too. You can ask me question. I'm on Slack. I'm everywhere. Okay. In honor of merit. What happened? Oh, no code there. Oh, look more. All right. Thank you, guys. You guys should go and work on your this thing. You should go and work on your task. Okay, yes. They've told you no excuses. So, okay. So yeah, I'll follow him up so that I will put this on. I put this on. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone.